A very good morning to all of you. It's great to be here at Great Indian Developer Summit once again. We live in very interesting times indeed. The web has been evolving in multiple dimensions. And what I thought I'll do today is to pick 4 or 5 dimensions in which I feel the web is changing at a very rapid pace and share with you some of the thoughts that I have in those areas. So I work at Adobe and I'm the platform evangelist and I'm also an architect, but today I'm going to talk to you about how the web is evolving. So the first dimension in which I think the web is changing in a very big way is that the web is becoming real time. What I mean by that is we're no longer looking at static content that somebody produced at some point in time for consumption later on by several people. We are looking at content that is being generated on the web, which is real time. And let me just show you some examples of what they are. So if you look at, for example, how search itself is evolving. We are no longer interested in just searching for documents and things that people have created earlier and that have been indexed a long time ago. We are interested in knowing what people are talking about right now. So it's no surprise that search engines have started incorporating some of these kinds of status feeds into their indexing engine, into their engine, so that you can actually get to know how the web is also changing at a dynamic pace. It's not only the fact that you just want to see results like this. Even if you want to see something like a visualization, right? You want to see visualizations which are real time, right? If you take the same example of, say, for example, Twitter feeds, right? So here is an example of an application that actually does some kind of a shallow sentiment analysis on Twitter feeds, and it basically looks for what people are loving, what people are hating, what people are thinking about, and things like that, right? And you can actually see how much more different this kind of an interface is, how much more different this kind of an experience is of the web as compared to what it has always been until very recently. So it's not just textual content, it's also about things like media content. Very recently, we were all witness to the fascinating matches on IPL, and these IPL matches, I'm not sure how many of you watched it on YouTube, but I actually liked to watch it on YouTube for 2 reasons. One was because I was at work at that time, but it was also because I could actually interact with others while I'm watching these videos, right? It's not just a living room experience, it's also the fact that I can actually get to know what my other friends are doing at that same point in time. I can watch what they're tweeting about. I can see things like that, right? So this is another interesting aspect of how the web is becoming truly, truly real time. Right? And what about collaboration itself? We don't necessarily want to collaborate with people where you have an application in front of you and you use the application, then you say, okay, I need to call somebody and find out what exactly this means or things like that. So if you're actually editing a document, say for example, as is shown here, that's a buzzword document that's being edited simultaneously by 2 different people, right? And it should be possible for 2 people to actually do live collaboration. Asynchronous collaboration is something that we've always been used to. But what about live collaboration? Now the web, I think, is truly changing to also support the paradigm of live collaboration. So suffice it to say here that we need to get used to this new paradigm of the web really becoming real time. It is no longer just about documents that have been indexed some time ago. It's no longer about just using applications on the web. It is also about getting to know how the web itself is changing real time and you being in the thick and midst of all of those things. So that's about one dimension of what is happening on the web. The other interesting thing that's happening on the web is also about how do we experience the web itself. The web is no longer just an infrastructure. It is an experience medium. So we've always been used to seeing things like text and graphics and videos. These are things that have already been done, right? That's not that interesting anymore. But what is interesting is, can you do things like, for example, say augmented reality on a web browser, right? Thanks to some of the toolkits that are available today, you can do things like augmented reality on the browser. You can also do things like live video streaming, which we saw earlier with the YouTube example. But you can also do things like, for example, new kinds of input mechanisms to your applications. It's no longer just the keyboard and the mouse. It's about gestures, right? Can you do gaze detection? Can you do things like multi-touch recognition and taking advantage of gestures that people might have there and using them as inputs? Can you do things like using the accelerometer on your device to make that as an input for your application and then control maybe a game or something like that? These are very interesting ways in which people can start to experience the web, whether they experience that on the browser or whether they experience that on a device. All those things are becoming possible, and all these things are becoming also possible because the runtimes that are supporting these kinds of applications are becoming richer and richer. So it is no longer the case where you always thought about web applications as something that executes only on the server. It is also the case that web applications have a server component to it, but there is a good amount of local processing that happens on the client side, which makes the experience that much more engaging, immersive, and interactive. So it's not just the fact that innovation in input mechanisms. Also things like, for example, if you have a touch input device, you also need to provide something like a haptic feedback. Otherwise, how would you know? How would the user know whether he has actually touched something properly, right? So some of you who might have used some of the recent devices would probably understand what I mean by haptic feedback. But other interesting things like bringing in the reality that is outside into the context of your application, that is augmented reality. Let me see if I can actually show you an augmented reality demo here. So you see this application here. This is an application that is developed by GE. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show this card here in front of the camera. The web application is taking camera as the input. And what it does is it recognizes this marker, and it will actually bring up a 3D model that's part of the application right within this. Now, you can see that. I'm not sure how clear this is, but you get the idea. You can actually bring, so there is another great example that you might find on the web. This is done by the US Postal Services. If you actually want to ship something to, say, somebody, and then you want to know what is the size of the box that will actually hold your article, right? So there is a virtual box simulator, and then you can actually, that's an augmented reality application. You can start that application, and then you can actually put the marker in front of the camera, and then you can actually see whether the object, the real world object that you have, fits into the box size that you have actually chosen. So some really, really nice, interesting applications coming up in augmented reality. I urge you to go and check it out in case you have already not done that. Oops. Okay, that brings us to the next important dimension where the web is actually changing a lot. And that's the case where the web is already being accessed more from non-PC devices, right? So, but the challenges here are that these devices are proliferating at a big rate. And then the challenge is that it is not necessarily open completely. There is an explosion in the number of devices, and users really want the same kind of experience that you get on the browser or on the desktop, also on the devices, right? So the idea here is, how can you give a consistent experience even on your device? And you also need to make your application on the device be something like a contextual application. You might do some part of your workflow maybe on your browser, maybe some part of it on your desktop, and maybe you do some other part of it in your device application. So how can you build these applications which are not only being able to, that are able to experience on multiple screens, but you also have a consistent experience, right? Not necessarily the same thing, something that actually respects the soul of the device, something that takes advantage of the device capabilities and not something that is just the least common denominator of what the device provides. So that's the interesting problem here, right? The problem there is we don't necessarily have a consistent device platform for you to build applications. If you're a mobile application developer, you probably have to write an application for every platform out there if things are not as open as it is in the web, right? So this is why Adobe has actually started the Open Screen project, where we actually collaborate with a number of partners to bring the ubiquitous Flash runtime, not just to your browsers and desktops, but also to a variety of devices, be they phones, be they tablets, be they television sets, be they whatever, right? So the idea here is, if you are a developer on this platform, you can target applications that are on multiple screens and multiple form factors. Okay. The other aspect is the web is becoming social, and this is pretty obvious. I'm sure there are many of you already here who are either tweeting or Facebooking here. So, but what is interesting is that it's not just about these being standalone applications. These social networks have themselves transformed to become platforms. So if you take, for example, this is a screenshot of an application that I actually like. It's an application where you can browse through various flavors of ice creams, and then you can actually share your ideas. You can share, you can find out where this ice cream is available in various cities, and then you can probably talk about it, you can discuss with your friends, and you can actually popularize an ice cream with your this thing. You can start a campaign, you can do things like that, right? And you can see I'm already logged in here. I can invite, which is called the distribution manager, which helps you to keep track of your widgets, not just on one particular social network. We provide a service which is called the distribution service, using which you can distribute widgets across a variety of social networks. You can place your content in a variety of places, and not just place your content. You can actually track the performance of your content in each of those networks, right? So this is another interesting thing. So this makes it a lot more easy for you to think about monetization of widgets. I have a whole talk on cloud computing later in the afternoon, so I'll not probably take too much of time here. But the point is, you need to, as developers, this is probably the only slide I have for developers specifically here, but the idea is, how can we take advantage of two big things that are happening today: local processing as well as hosted services. So hosted services to me translates to cloud computing. You have a variety of services that are out there in the cloud, right? And if you're an application developer, you can build rich internet applications using a variety of technologies, right? And you can build applications that are really compelling, that have the reach, and that can promise the experience that your users are looking for. The final thing that I really want to talk about is the fact that we talked about Web 2.0 and the architecture of participation and things like that, right? But not until very recently has the true democratization of the data on the web has happened. Increasingly now, many of the platform companies have also started opening up their data, and it is not just corporations, it is also big governments. So, the US government probably was one of the first to start off on the blocks, but the UK government has also started doing this. They've actually started sharing a lot of the government data that are publicly shareable in various formats. And then as developers, we can build the applications that we need them, right? So it is not only about making the data available, but it is also about giving an opportunity to the developers to participate in the process of co-creation, because that is a very important thing. There is no point in today's world where somebody can sit in one corner, develop something, and hope that others will use it. If you don't necessarily involve your users in co-creation, it's not likely to succeed as much as if you were to allow them to participate. So there have been some interesting contests that have been launched as well in the city of New York, if I remember correctly, where you can actually build applications based on the data that is published by the city, and interesting things happening there. The other thing that I really want to talk about is the fact that data is useless if you don't necessarily have the metadata and the semantics associated with it. So there are various initiatives that are underway at this point in time. One of them is, of course, the linked open data, which is trying to get various data sets that people have into one kind of a common understanding, so that people can query and have a deeper understanding of what these tuples in these semantic databases are. I'm not going to delve deep into this, but suffice it to say here that what is important is the world is changing around us, and Adobe as a company has always been at the forefront of revolutionizing how the world engages with both ideas as well as information, right? So if you look at all the things that I've talked about, many of them were applications that are actually built on the Adobe Flash Platform, and this essentially is what the Adobe Flash Platform is. We provide runtimes for the browsers as plugins, for desktops, for devices, a variety of devices. We talked about the open screen project a little bit earlier. We also have the right tools using which people can build these comparing applications or content, or for that matter even video, or bring them all together in a singular unique experience that is very compelling to the user. And as developers, we can use the tools that are provided. We also have server products that you can use within the enterprise. We also have some of the services that are out there in the cloud for you to build. For example, if you want to build a collaborative rich internet application, we do provide a collaboration service out there in the cloud, which you can actually use on a need basis. And you can embed collaboration components right within the context of your application. So how has all this been possible? It's all been possible primarily because of the several years of innovation, more than 10 years of innovation that has gone into our most ubiquitous runtime, which is the Flash player. Something that allows you to build those expressive applications, being able to display various kinds of content, be it rich text, video, audio, graphics, whether it is raster or vector or animations or what have you. It's about expression, and you can do that very easily with the Flash player. And Adobe is also an open company. Several parts of the Flash platform have been opened out for people to take advantage of and build things. So it is an ecosystem that is not just completely built by Adobe, but it is something that is nurtured by developers like all of us here, and something that you can use anytime, anywhere, because increasingly the web is getting to be about how you access that through the devices. With that, I think I'm coming to the end of my talk. I can take a few questions. Sure.
Everyone is talking about the cloud, and more data is going to the cloud. So what you are doing to take care of the security of the data? Like there was attack on the Gmail account in China, and it's increasing day by day. So what is your view on the security in the cloud?
Yeah. So yes, there are considerations, security considerations on how you take care of the data when you put it outside your premises. And this is not really a new problem, okay? People have always thought about it this way, okay? A long time ago, people used to think that, that they will never keep their money in banks because it's my money, I'll keep it under my pillow and I'll sleep over it. But the fact of the matter is, a bank has probably better infrastructure than what you have, right? Security infrastructure than what you have, because they're not just taking care of your money, they're taking care of a whole lot of other people. And they will necessarily put in the various processes. It's a combination of technology, processes, policies, and several things. So it's not a simple answer. And we need to understand, various providers, what they actually provide, and choose the right providers. And choosing the right providers and the right technology and making the right choices, I think you can be reasonably sure that your data can be as safe as it were elsewhere, perhaps. Of course, you need to take those steps. Yep.
Is the new Flash player platform that is single-threaded or multi-threaded?
The Flash player. Okay. So the Flash player will not allow you to write multi-threaded programs, if that's what your question is. Okay. The Flash player will not allow you to write multi-threaded programs, but that's not necessarily has not been a requirement for several reasons. One of the things is also because if you look at the way the Flash player has come about, the Flash player supports a language called ActionScript 3, which is an ECMAScript-based standard. And if you want to comply with that standard, you really can't do multi-threaded stuff in that. Okay. So there are choices that you have to make. It is possible and it is engineering-wise, it is possible to actually make something like a multi-threaded runtime. It is not a big thing. It's about how you want to take care of all the people who have invested in your platform so far, how they have actually built applications, being able to run applications that have already been built for Flash since maybe version 4 or version 3 or whatever, running till 10. It's a combination of all of these things, right? But that doesn't mean to say that we should not look into some of these things. And these are things that we will look into. But at this point in time, to answer your question straight, the Flash player will not allow programmers to do multi-threaded programming.
My personal concern is I have an application which is purely asynchronous. So I have to receive some data asynchronously and send some data asynchronously. So for that, if I am planning to do that runtime for web, or planning to do that application for web, either I have to go for Java or I have to go for Flash.
But is your Java executing on the client side? Are you using Java on the client side? You should think about, okay, you're using applets. Okay. So there are, again, trade-offs that you have to make, right? I mean, if you look at the penetration of Flash player, you cannot necessarily guarantee the same kind of experience that you get with Flash player. I mean, I know you're talking about single-threaded and multi-threaded. So like in any technology decision that you make, there are there are pros and cons that you have to evaluate, right? And there are trade-off decisions that you have to make. If Java runtime is something that you think will enable you to reach all your customers, and if that multi-threaded programming is the single most important thing that you want, I think you should go ahead and do it. But the point is, people are not building those kinds of applications today on the web that run on the browser.
That is primarily because for our application we found that Flash is comparatively better, but we cannot compromise on the performance as well.
Yeah, there are other ways by which you can solve these problems. Don't want to get into this because there may be other people who want to ask questions. But if you're interested, why don't we actually meet in the stall and we can actually have a more discussion. Okay, cool.
Can I use Adobe Flash on my mobile?
Yeah, Adobe Flash has been available on several mobile devices for a long time now. Okay, the version of Flash that is available on mobile devices is called Flashlight, but we have also announced the Flash Player 10.1 on a variety of devices. The Flash Player 10.1 is currently in beta. Actually, I think we have a release candidate out, I think. But yes, Flash Player is available on a variety of devices. Okay, time's up. Okay. So if you have any more questions, I'd be more than happy to take those questions at this stall. Thank you very much.